Assalamu alaikum dear students and friends. Today we will discuss about the properties and synthesis of alkenes. This is the table of contents. So in this video we will consider about the properties of alkenes and how they are designated as cis trans and EZ. Then we will also discuss about the synthesis of alkenes through elimination reactions and what E2 and E1 reactions are. And in the end, we will discuss the two important rules, ZSEF and the Hoffman rules. So let us begin with the introduction. Alkenes are hydrocarbons containing carbon-carbon double bond. The old name for alkenes is olefins. These are the two naturally occurring alkenes, the vitamin A and the cholesterol. You could see the presence of the double bond. As far as the physical properties of alkenes are concerned, they are very much similar to the alkanes, that is being nonpolar, soluble in nonpolar solvents, and having the low density. The first three alkenes are gases at room temperature, and then they start becoming liquid and solid at room temperature after the first three alkenes. Here I would like to add that the first member of alkene is ethene, because alkene must be having a carbon-carbon double bond. However, the first member for alkane is methane, that is CH4. Let's discuss about the cis trans and EZ system for the designation of the alkenes. Well, for the cis trans system, there must be two similar substituents on both sides of the double bond. You could see in the first example, the only difference is the orientation of the two similar substituents. For example, the two red colored hydrogens, they are similar obviously. They are lying on the opposite side of the double bonds. One is lying upward and one is lying downward, so it's trans. However, if they are lying on the same side of the double bond, for example, the blue one, it's called cis. Further examples, the two ethyl groups, the red one, the two ethyl groups, they are lying on the opposite side of the double bond, so it's trans. However, in the second part of this example, the two ethyl groups are lying on the same side of the double bond, so it's called cis. Further example is there. The first part is the trans isomer and the second part is the cis isomer for the same reason. Well, what we have learned for cis trans isomer is the presence of the two similar groups on both sides of the double bond, and then their orientation, whether they are lying on the same side of the double bond or lying on the opposite sides of the double bond. What about this case? Should this molecule be called cis or trans? Well, the problem lies here because we do not have the two same groups on both sides of the double bond. Rather, we have the four different groups: the chlorine, hydrogen, methyl, and bromine. So this molecule cannot be designated as cis or trans. However, we may designate this molecule as cis or trans with relative to the particular group. For example, if we consider the chlorine as a reference, then this chlorine is cis with respect to the methyl, and the same chlorine is trans with respect to the bromine. So to consider the designation of such molecules, such double bonded system, which cannot be treated as cis or trans as a whole, the EZ system has come into action. And this is basically Cahen-Ingold-Prelog convention. The system is based on the atomic number of the attached atom. Higher the atomic number, the higher the priority is. So by this convention, if the two high prioritized groups, they are lying opposite to the double bond, it's called E. And if the two high prioritized groups are lying on the same side of the double bond, it's called Z. E and Z are basically the German words Entgegen and Zusammen. Entgegen means opposite in English and Zusammen means together in English. So consider this example and let's find out whether it's E or Z. So there are two carbons which are double bonded, the carbon 1 and carbon 2. So if we consider the carbon 2, there are two groups, the methyl and the bromo. So bromine is obviously having high atomic number than carbon of this methyl. And on carbon 1, chlorine is having high atomic number as compared to the hydrogen. So the two high prioritized groups for the carbon 2 and carbon 1 are bromine and chlorine respectively. And C, they are lying on the opposite side of the double bond. This is the double bond. The high prioritized group, bromine, is lying downward and the high prioritized groups is lying upward for the carbon 1. So that is why it's E. This molecule could have been Z if the bromine and methyl are replaced. In doing so, we will be having the two prioritized groups lying on the same side, and hence it may become Z. Same strategy may also be applied if we replace the chlorine and hydrogen together. The bromine and chlorine will come to the same side of the face, and they will be again called Z isomer. Other examples, you could see the first example, the chlorine and hydrogen lying on the carbon 2. Obviously the chlorine has high priority and hydrogen has low priority. So the high priority on the carbon 2 and the carbon 1, they are lying opposite to each other. So this is E isomer. In the second example, that high priority for the first carbon is not chlorine, rather it's bromine because of having high atomic number. On carbon 2, it's chlorine because the other is hydrogen. So the two high prioritized groups are lying on the same side, the bromine and the chlorine for the example 2. So it is Z isomer. And they are the other examples. If we are not supposed to consider all atoms, rather we will consider only the atoms that are directly attached to the double bonded carbon. So if we consider the carbon 3, it is directly attached with the bromine and this carbon. Obviously this carbon is further connected to two hydrogens and another carbon. So the bromine is high prioritized for this carbon, this sp2 hybridized carbon. And here in this case, for the carbon 4, this is the carbon and this is the carbon, they are the same, but this carbon, the carbon number 5, is connected with the two hydrogen and one carbon. However, this carbon is connected to the 3 carbon, so this is given high priority. This tertiary butyl group is given high priority than this normal butyl group. So the two high prioritized groups are lying on the same side, the bromo and the tertiary butyl. So that is why it is Z in nature. Now let us discuss about the relative stabilities of alkenes. Cis and trans alkenes, they do not have the same stability. What I mean to say is that it is obvious in case of cis, the first example belongs to the cis and the second example belongs to the trans. If you consider the first example of the cis isomer, you may clearly see there is a crowding between the two groups which are in their close proximity. However, in the trans isomer, the two R groups are lying opposite to each other. So that means the cis isomer is less stable and the trans isomer is more stable. Well, this criteria of stability is judged by the heat of reaction. And let us consider the simple reaction of the alkene, the hydrogenation. In the presence of a platinum catalyst, the alkene is hydrogenated to afford the alkane. This is an exothermic reaction. So in doing so, the heat is released. You could see with the negative sign. So the heat of hydrogenation for this particular reaction is minus 120 kilojoule per mole. It means each mole of this starting material, this alkene, releases 120 kilojoule energy. With releases, it means the negative charge. So if we compare the three different hydrogenations for these three different starting materials, they all end up with the same alkane. So it's a good comparison if we do. This is the mono-substituted alkene. This is the di-substituted. This is the di-substituted. How do I know this is mono-substituted? Because the carbon-carbon double bond has only one alkyl group attached. However, in the second example, it has two alkyl groups attached. In the third example, again, it's two alkyl groups attached. But the difference between the second and the third alkene is the second one is the cis and the third one is the trans. So let us see their graph values. The monosubstituted alkene upon hydrogenation released 127 kilojoule per mole energy. The cis alkene released 120 and the trans alkene released a 115 kilojoule per mole. So you know the compound that releases the least energy is the most stable, and the compound that releases the highest energy is the least stable. So the stability is increasing with the more number of substitutions around the double bonded carbons. So the overall relative stabilities of alkene, it is dependent on the number of attachment on the number of alkyl groups around the carbon-carbon double bond. So it says the more highly substituted the carbon atoms of the double bond, the greater the alkene's stability. So this is the comparison. The tetra-substituted alkenes are the most stable alkenes because they have the substitution of alkyl groups on the both double bonded carbon, and that then after tetra substituted alkene it's tri substituted, then the di substituted, the green ones, and then the mono substituted, and then the unsubstituted alkene. So this is the trend for the stability of alkene. Increase in the number of alkyl groups around the carbon-carbon double bond, increase in the stability. So let us consider the two alkenes. Which should be more stable? Well, the first structure, it's a tri-substituted alkene. You could see the double bonded carbons, it's attached with the 2-methyl, and this carbon is attached with the methyl. So overall it's tri-substituted, and this is di-substituted alkene. So we know that the tri-substituted alkene is more stable than di-substituted alkene. And if we consider the second structure and the second example of this cyclopentene derivative, this one is the tri-substituted and this one is the di-substituted. So again, the first structure is more stable than the second structure. Now let us discuss about the cycloalkenes. As the name suggests, the alkenes which are in cyclic form are called cycloalkenes. Technically, the first member of cycloalkene is cyclopropene, because for having a cycle, there must be at least 3 atoms. We cannot have cycloethene. So the first member is cyclopropene, and then cyclobutene, and then so on, so on, so on. It says the first 3 cycloalkenes, that is the cycloalkenes containing the 5 carbon atoms, they are only existing in the cis form. You could simply see they cannot afford the trans isomer, because the alkyl substituents around the carbon-carbon double bond, they must be lying on the same side of the face of the double bond. However, in case of cyclohexene, if you consider, obviously it is also the cis isomer is the most predominant, but if we consider this hypothetical cyclohexene, which is trans in nature, this also exists in fact, but it exists for a very short lifetime, and it has never been isolated, but it has been observed through some other techniques. However, if we increase the number of carbons in the cycloalkenes, for example, the trans cyclooctane, it's isolable. It has been isolated into 2 different enantiomers. Now let us discuss about the synthesis of alkenes through the elimination reactions. So if you see this equation, the carbon having the Y substituent and the carbon having the Z substituent, if the Y and Z substituents, they are removed from this reaction, the starting material, this alkane is formed. So this is called the elimination reaction because something is being eliminated and the alkene is being formed. So two fragments of molecules are lost from adjacent carbon atoms and multiple bonds are created. So two specific elimination reactions examples are the dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halides, which is this one, and the dehydration of alcohols. So if we consider the first example, the dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halides, what does this name mean? With the prefix DED, it means removal. Hydrohalogenation means the removal of hydrogen and halogen, that is minus HX from the alkyl halides. It affords the alkene. And with the term dehydration, it means removal of water because D means removal, hydration means water molecule. So dehydration of alcohol means the removal of H2O from the alcohol to afford the alkene. So these are the two very most common elimination reactions to afford the alkenes. So we will discuss both types of reactions in detail. So let us start from the dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halides. Reaction of alkyl halides with a strong base eliminates HX, where X is halogen. For example, in the first structure, you could see it's a secondary alkyl halide. If we treat this with the sodium ethoxide, which is a very strong base in the presence of ethanol as a solvent at 55 degrees Celsius, we get this alkene. For the second reaction, this is the tertiary alkyl halide. Again, we have got the alkene. For the third reaction, we have the primary alkyl halide and we have got this alkene. We will discuss the reactivity of all the secondary, the tertiary and the primary alkyl halides. You could see for the third reaction, it's a primary alkyl halide, and for this primary alkyl halide, they did not use the smaller size base, rather they used the bulkier base, the tertiary butoxide. So there is a reason behind this. We will discuss in coming slides. So this is the things that are to be discussed for the dehydrohalogenation. This halide serves as a leaving group, and you know the carbon directly connected with the leaving group with the halogen is called alpha carbon, and the carbon adjacent to alpha is called beta carbon, and hydrogens attached to the beta carbons are called beta hydrogens. So why are we discussing these things? Basically, in dehydrohalogenation, the beta hydrogen is lost through the base to afford this alkene. Consider this example. This beta hydrogen, this orange one, is being attacked with the tertiary butoxide, the base, and then the bond collapses. The sigma bond collapses between the carbon-carbon to have the carbon-carbon double bond, and the bromine is departed. And we have got this alkene, and the byproducts are potassium bromide and the tertiary butanol. So let us discuss about the E2 reaction. What E2 reactions are? E means the elimination, and 2 means the bimolecular, which I will tell you after some time. So let us discuss about the mechanism. This ethoxide attacked this beta hydrogen. Again, let me recall what beta hydrogen is. This is the bromine, that is the halogen. So this carbon is the alpha carbon because it is directly connected to the bromine. So this carbon, the second carbon, is called the beta carbon, and the hydrogen is called the beta hydrogen. So this base attacked this beta hydrogen. In fact, it abstracted this beta hydrogen. So we have this breakage of this CH single bond and the formation of new CC double bond, and this bromine will depart to maintain the tetravalency of carbon. So ethoxide removes the beta proton, CH bond breaks, new pi bond forms, and bromine begins to depart, that I have just discussed. So this is the transition state. the bonds which are being broken and the bonds which are being formed are shown in dotted lines. You could see this ethoxide is going to have the bond with the hydrogen, the beta hydrogen, so it's dotted. This CH bond is going to be broken, so again it's shown in dotted. This CC pi bond is going to be formed, so it's shown in dotted line, and this CBr bond is going to be broken, so again it's shown in the dotted line. So this is called the transition state. It's placed in the parenthesis with the sign. It's called double dagger. So we have got the product is alkene and the byproduct. So CC double bond is fully formed and the other products are ethanol and the bromide. So this is the free energy diagram for this E2 reaction. See, this ethoxide and this haloalkane are the starting material, and this alkene and ethanol and bromide are the product. There is a transition state, and E2 reaction has only one transition state. With E2, it means the rate determining step has the two molecules involved. Which two molecules are involved? Obviously, it's written here, the haloalkane, the alkyl halide, and the ethoxide. They both are present in the rate determining step when the reaction is being carried out. So this is the second order overall, that is called bimolecular reaction. So the number 2 attached with the E is because of this reason. Beta hydrogen, leaving group and base must be coplanar. With the coplanar, it means all must be lying in the same plane. So if you see this diagram, you can understand what I'm trying to say. This is the base that is going to attack the beta hydrogen, and at the same time the beta hydrogen and the beta carbons bond, single bond, is going to collapse between the CC, and the leaving group is going to remove the system. But see, the leaving group, the beta hydrogen and the base, they are on the same plane, because if any of the members is on the other side of the plane, this reaction will not occur. So this representation is also shown here. This projection is called Newman projection. If you see, the base is attacking the hydrogen, the beta hydrogen, and this beta hydrogen, when being abstracted, the sigma bond between the CH is going to collapse between the beta and alpha carbons, and at the same time this leaving group is going to leave. So all this is being happened on the same plane and at the same time. Now let us discuss the Zetsef rule and the Hoffman rule. So first, the Zetsef rule. If there are two different types of beta hydrogens, for example this one, you consider this alkyl halide, there are two beta carbons, so there are two beta hydrogens. One is called HA, one is called HB. So you can potentially have two different products. What do I mean to say? If you consider the red one, when this base attack the beta hydrogen, we have this beta hydrogen which is called HA. We have the carbon-carbon double bond here, like in the above picture. But if you consider the blue one, the other end of the beta hydrogen is being abstracted, so we have the double bond on the other side of the molecule. So when we have two types of beta hydrogens, we may have two types of alkenes. So which alkene is more stable? You already know, because the first alkene, the top alkene, is tri-substituted, but the bottom alkene is di-substituted. So the top alkene is more substituted, so it is more stable. So this thing is shown in this energy profile diagram. This is the ethoxide, the base. This is the alkyl halide, and there are two. Let me discuss in detail. This is when this ethoxide attacks the green carbon's hydrogen, because there are color coded. The blue carbon means the alpha carbon that is directly attached to the halogen. The green carbon is the beta, and the red is also beta. So first, in this graph, when the base abstract this green hydrogen, you could see, because there is a double bond between the green and the blue carbon. So this is the tri-substituted alkene is formed. However, this is a di-substituted alkene is formed. However, when this red hydrogen is removed, we have the tri-substituted alkene. So as I discussed a few minutes ago, the tri-substituted alkene being more stable, it must be having at the low energy side of the graph. So it must be having the low transition states energy as compared to the disubstituted alkene. When a small base is used, such as ethoxide or hydroxide, the major product will be the more highly substituted alkene, as mentioned, and that is the most stable alkene. For example, if we use the ethoxide, sodium ethoxide, so it will prefer to pull this red proton off rather than pulling the blue proton off, because when it pulls the red proton off, we will be having the tri-substituted alkene, and if it pulled the blue proton off, it would be disubstituted alkene. So you could see the percent yield, the tri-substituted alkene has a higher percent yield. And same is the case for this particular molecule. There are two types of beta hydrogens for this equation 2 starting material. But sodium ethoxide, being smaller in size, will prefer to abstract the proton from here, so that we may have the double and disubstituted alkene rather than the monosubstituted alkene. So what the ZSEF rule is, so what we have learned so far, in fact, it is the ZSEF rule. It says in elimination reaction, the more highly substituted alkene is predominated. So this is the order of the stability of alkene that we discussed. The tetra-substituted alkene is more stabler than the tri-substituted alkene, and followed by the disubstituted alkene and monosubstituted alkene. Now let us discuss about the formation of less substituted alkene using a bulky base. Dehydrohalogenation is carried out using sterically bulky base such as tertiary butoxide. It favors the formation of less substituted alkenes. It's opposite to ZSEF rule, and it's called the Hoffman rule. We will consider the reason as well from this real example. This is a alkyl halide. If we used a small sized base, sodium ethoxide, so it will pull the blue proton to have the more substituted alkene. That is this tri-substituted alkene in higher yield. However, if we used the bulkier alkene base, it will prefer to pull the proton from the least hindered side to afford the least substituted alkene. This one, which is in 70%. So the reason is very obvious. Tertiary butoxide, being bulky in nature, will prefer to attack from the side which is least hindered. However, the small size base may penetrate in the middle of the molecule. So this is again the pictorial illustration. What I have said, the small size base may go inside, go between the molecule. However, the bulky base prefers to attack from the end side of the molecule. So ZSEF rule versus Hoffman rule. This is the alkyl halide. If we use the smaller size base, we have the more substituted alkene. If we have the larger size base, we have the less substituted alkene as the major products. Further examples. Now let us discuss about the stereochemistry of the E2 reactions. 5 atoms involved in the transition state of the E2 reactions. Which 5 atoms are involved? That I will show you in a coming slide. And the conformation must be the anti-coplanar, that I will also discuss. So again, consider the E2 reaction. Base attacks the beta proton, and the sigma bond between the CH collapses, and a new CC pi bond is formed, and the leaving groups depart. So if we count the atoms, 1 atom from this base, 1 from the beta hydrogen, 1 from the beta carbon, 3 atoms, 1 atom from the alpha carbon and 1 atom from the leaving group. So there are total 5 atoms in being involved for this E2 reactions, and all must be from the same, must be existing on the same plane, and the beta hydrogen must be lying opposite to the leaving group, which is called anti-coplanar conformation. There is also another possibility that the leaving group and the beta hydrogen, they are lying on the same plane. If such is the case, it is called syn coplanar, which is which may be seen with some particular examples. Otherwise, in most of the cases, the beta hydrogen must be lying opposite to the leaving group. So orientation requirement, H and Br have to be trans, which is called anti-periplanar. So this is the example which is very important to discuss here. If you consider the product, you will certainly know that the hydrogen must be removed from here. So that is why the double bond is formed here. But why hydrogen is not removed from the other part? I mean, we only got one product rather than having the both products. So if we consider its chair form, we will come to know the reason that this starting material, this cyclohexane derivative, is shown in this chair form. And this bromine is above the plane because this is the wedge bond, so it is in the axial form. This ethyl is also above, so the bromine and ethyl, they are on the same phase, being above, and the methyl is below the plane. So for the removal of the beta hydrogen, it must be lying exactly opposite to the leaving group. So this blue hydrogen is the only possible hydrogen that may be removed from the base. The red hydrogen cannot be removed because it is not the anti-periplanar with respect to the CBr bond. However, if this methyl would be above the plane, then we may have the red hydrogen here, and then we may have the both possibilities. So this ethoxide will pull this blue hydrogen and then bromine will knock off, and we will have the double bond between the ethyl carbon and this carbon. So only blue hydrogen is trans to coplanar as discussed. However, if we have two beta hydrogen which are both anti-periplanar, so we will have the both products. Then here the second concept will come into action about the more substituted alkene will be preferred and the less substituted alkene will be less preferred. These are some further examples. So I'm just passing these. Okay, so let us discuss about the even reaction now. We discussed E2 reactions. Now we are going to discuss about the even reactions. So in even reactions, the leaving group is knocked off. We have the carbocation, generation of the carbocation, which is flat, and then the base abstract the beta hydrogen, and when we have the alkene. So what is the difference between the E2 and the even? The difference is very obvious. In E2 reaction, the attack of the base to the beta hydrogen and the leaving group, and the all activities occurred at the same time. However, in case of even reaction, it's a two-step reaction. First, the leaving group left the electrify and the starting material. We have the carbocation, and then the base attack the beta hydrogen. This is the mechanism. The chlorine is knocked. We have the carbocation generation, and then this base attack the beta hydrogen, and when we have the double bond. Well, even and SN1 reactions are competing. What does it mean? So let us discuss from the example. This is the tertiary alkyl halide. The chlorine is knocked. We have the carbocation here, the tertiary carbocation. The water serving as nucleophile. If it is serving as a nucleophile, it will attack the tertiary center and we will have the tertiary alcohol. However, if it pulls the beta hydrogen, it will serve as the alkene. So both possibilities are there. However, which is favored, you could see in this particular case, the substitution is favored than the elimination. So we will discuss what to do to make elimination favor. These are the points that we have to consider to make elimination favor over substitution. Use a secondary or tertiary alkyl halide if possible, because steric hindrance in the substrate will inhibit the substitution. So if we want to make elimination favor, it's better to use the secondary or tertiary haloalkane alkyl halide rather than using the primary. When the synthesis must begin with the primary alkyl halide, because if it is inevitable, if we don't have any other option but to use the primary alkyl halide, then we should use the bulky base to make the elimination favor. The high concentration of strong base is also obviously important to make the elimination favor, and the elevated temperature. Because as we know, the elimination reaction is entropically favored. So elevating the temperature, it will favor the elimination, because we will have the more molecules being produced, and hence the entropy of the system will increase. So this is the elimination and substitution reactions competition. As discussed, if the nucleophile attacks the beta hydrogen and we have the double bond after leaving groups, it's called the elimination. However, if it directly attacks to the alpha carbon and the leaving group is knocked, as in the red arrows, it's called SN2 reaction. This is called the primary substrate. So this is with the primary substrate. With a strong base, it favors SN2. This is the example. This is the butyl bromide. If we use sodium ethoxide, so it's more favorable to have the SN2 reaction than the elimination reaction, because the ethoxide will simply attack this alpha carbon and the bromine will knock off. We have the ether as a product. However, if we have the secondary alkyl halide, not the primary alkyl halide, but the secondary alkyl halide, so elimination now starts becoming favored. And you could see from this example, this is the secondary alkyl halide. When the ethoxide attacks, we have this elimination of abstraction of this beta hydrogen to have this alkene. So there is lesser possibility of having the SN2 reaction, but we will have the E2 reaction. Same is the case for tertiary substrate. If we have the tertiary substrate, the tertiary alkyl halide like this tertiary butyl bromide, and it is when reacted with the sodium ethoxide, and the elimination is favored over the substitution. The reasons are very obvious. Because secondary and tertiary alkyl halides are sterically hindered as compared to the primary. So the base does not attack the alpha carbon, rather it serves as a base and just pulls the proton from the beta position. However, in case of primary alkyl halide, and the base, rather than becoming the base, it prefers to become as a nucleophile and attacks the alpha carbon, and the leaving group is knocked off. And if we increase the temperature, it's mentioned here, obviously elimination is more favorable, because elimination is an entropically favored reaction. So this is the competition. If we have the small unhindered base, the SN2 reaction is favored. If we have the hindered bulky base, the E2 reaction is favored. So you could see this is a very classical example. We have the same substrate, the butyl bromide. If it is treated with the sodium ethoxide, we'll have the SN2 reaction. If it is treated with the tertiary butoxide, we will have the E2 reaction as major products. So this is the basicity and polarizability. When this secondary alkyl halide is treated with the ethoxide, as mentioned, this E2 reaction is favored. However, when the base strength is weak, so it will prefer to attack to serve as a nucleophile. This acetate ion will attack this alpha carbon, and the bromine will knock off, and we will have this 100% acid reaction. So this will not serve as a base, but as a nucleophile. This is the comparison. When this tertiary alkyl halide is treated with the sodium with the ethoxide, the elimination is favored. However, when it is treated with ethanol, the very weak base, so substitution reaction is favored. So far we have discussed about the dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halide to afford the alkene. Now we will discuss about the elimination of alcohols through the acid catalyzed dehydration. It says most alcohols undergo dehydration to form an alkene when heated with a strong acid. For example, this is a general equation. This H and OH are removed as the water, and we have the carbon-carbon double bond. But we will see the mechanism. It's not like this, that we simply just omit H and OH and have the double bond. Obviously, this HA, which is called acid, it will serve its role, a very important role for the removal of this hydroxy group. The temperature and the concentration of acid required to dehydrate an alcohol depend on the structure of the alcohol. Primary alcohols are obviously most difficult for the dehydration purpose. However, the secondary and tertiary alcohols are easy for the dehydration purpose. So for the primary alcohol, if we need to dehydrate, if we need to make the alkene from the primary alcohol, we have to use the high concentration of the acid and high temperature, like the concentrated sulfuric acid and temperature of 180 degrees Celsius for this particular reaction. However, when the secondary alcohol is there, it's not as difficult as it was with the case of the primary alcohol. So this is the secondary alcohol, the cyclohexanol. We use 85% phosphoric acid, and we have this cyclohexane. The mechanism will be followed after some slides, how this change has occurred. For the tertiary alcohol, it's easiest to have this alkenes. This OH and the adjacent carbon's hydrogen is removed to have the carbon-carbon double bond. The relative ease with which the alcohols will undergo dehydration is in the following order. This is the tertiary alcohol, the first one, and this is the most easy substrate to afford the alkene after dehydration, followed by the secondary alcohol, and which is followed by the primary alcohol. However, in doing so, sometimes rearrangement occurs. What does it mean? If you consider this particular example of 3,3-dimethyl-2-butanol, see, this is the OH, and obviously there is no beta hydrogen here because this carbon is quaternary. We have the 3-methyl groups attached. So this hydrogen will, the other part of this methyl, this molecule will be responsible for the removal of hydrogen, and when we will be having a carbon-carbon double bond at the terminal. This one is the product that is expected, but we see this product to be more existing. And how is it possible? We do not have the beta hydrogen here, and we have the 3-methyl attached to this carbon, but in this particular product, we don't have the 3 carbon, this carbon, we don't have 3-methyl groups attached with this carbon. So definitely something must have undergone, and that thing is called a rearrangement. So let us see the mechanism. Consider the dehydration of tertiary butyl alcohol. The first step must be the protonation of alcohol, and this alcoholic hydroxy and the alcoholic oxygen will attack the acidic H, and we will have the protonated alcohol, and then this protonated alcohol will leave the system to have the tertiary carbocation. And now this tertiary carbocation is directly attached to 3-methyl groups, each having 3 hydrogens. So there are total 9 hydrogens, which all are beta with respect to this carbocation, and all are equivalent. So when this water serves as a base, it may remove any of the hydrogen. For example, let us show this hydrogen is being removed. So this the lone pair attacks this beta hydrogen, and we have the double bond carbon carbon between these two atoms. So this is how the 2-methyl propane is formed. So let us recall about the carbocation stability. The tertiary carbocations are more stable than tertiary and secondary, which is in turn more stable than primary and then super primary carbocation. And the reason is, the reason of tertiary carbocation being more stable is the hyperconjugation that we will discuss in some other video lecture. So this is the most stable and this is the least stable. This is the graphical form. So let us discuss about the mechanism for the primary alcohol. Again, it starts from the in a very predictable manner. The alcohol will abstract the acidic proton to have the protonated alcohol, and then this, and in this case, because this is primary alcohol, now we cannot have the removal of water and having the tertiary carbocation, because in doing so we will be not having the tertiary carbocation, rather we will have the primary carbocation. And the primary carbocation is not as stable as the tertiary carbocation is. So that is why it goes through some other mechanism which is called E2 mechanism. The conjugate base will pull the beta proton, and after the formation between after the departure of the water molecule, we will have the carbon-carbon double bond. All these things, these activities will happen at the same time, and we will have this carbon-carbon double bond. So remember, if it is a primary alcohol, the dehydration follows the E2 mechanism, and if it is the secondary or tertiary alcohol, especially the tertiary alcohol, the dehydration follows the E1 mechanism. So again, let's discuss about the rearrangement that we discussed a few slides ago. Now it's time to discuss their mechanism. First step is again the protonation of this alcohol to have the protonated alcohol, and then this water molecule will remove, and we will have this secondary carbocation. Now you must be thinking that this water that is just removed will pull this beta hydrogen, and we will have the carbon-carbon double bond here. But remember, we have another option to have this tertiary carbocation. What if this methyl group from this adjacent carbon, this methyl, which is I'm just highlighting, if it moves to this tertiary carbocation, we will have this carbon as a tertiary carbocation. What I mean to say is that if this methyl migrates to this carbon, we may have the tertiary carbocation, which is obviously more stable than the secondary carbocation. So whenever there is a possibility of having the more stable carbocation, this will happen. So the secondary carbocation rearranges into the tertiary carbocation prior to the abstraction of the proton. And once the tertiary carbocation has been formed after the rearrangement, now the base will abstract the beta hydrogen, and now we have the two beta hydrogen here, the pink one and the blue one. And the answer is that if the pink hydrogen is removed, we will have the major product, because in doing so we will be having the tetra substituted alkene. However, if the blue hydrogen is removed, we will be having the di substituted alkene, which is a minor product. Some other common examples for the carbocation rearrangement is it's a methyl group migration. The methyl from carbon 1 is migrated to the carbocation center to have this tertiary carbocation C, the secondary carbocation converted into the tertiary carbocation. Hydride may also move to have the tertiary carbocation. In this case, this hydrogen taking its both electrons moves to the adjacent carbon center to afford this tertiary carbocation. Ring expansion is also possible. For example, if you consider this particular example, this is the secondary carbocation. But when this CC bond is broken, which is I'm highlighting, when this CC bond, sorry, it's this one, this CC bond is broken, and the electrons from this CC bond attacks this carbocation center, we will have here the positive charge, like you see here, the tertiary carbocation. So the tertiary carbocation is formed from the secondary carbocation after the ring expansion. The word ring expansion means initially it was the 5-membered ring, now it is the 6-membered ring, you could see here. Same is the case for primary alcohol. We have, if we have the possibility of the rearrangement, the reaction will go through the rearrangement reaction. So that's all for the properties and synthesis of alkenes. In the next lecture, we will discuss about the reactions of the chemical reactions of alkenes. Thank you.